Good afternoon, Notre Dame family and friends. My name is Rona Riadika, class of 2001, and I am the APA Board Director for Alumni Relations and the Intercultural Diversity and Inclusion Commissioner for the Notre Dame Club of New York. Thank you for joining us to celebrate this year's Lunar New Year 2021. Known as the Year of the Ox, Lunar New Year actually began on February 12th and actually culminates today. If anyone was born in 1925, 1937, 1949, 1961, 1973, 1985, 1997, 2009, or 2021, well, this is your year. And let us know, send us a comment in the chat box and let us know who you are. Today's event, A Culinary Experience with Grace Choi, will begin with a conversation with Chef Choi, followed by a cooking demonstration where Grace will show us how to make Korean savory pancakes, using a recipe inspired by her friend and Michelin award-winning chef Hooni Kim's famous scallion pancakes. To make the cooking segment more interactive, we've actually invited 3 of Grace's close friends to be guest home cooks, so you can also follow along with the recipe. Our home cooks will be cooking along with Grace, and for those that are at home viewing this right now, we will also post the recipe in the chat box in case you don't have it readily available. This event is brought to you by the Asian Pacific Alumni Board of Notre Dame, which is a subgroup of the Notre Dame Alumni Association dedicated to serving our Notre Dame community through the support and recognition of Asian Pacific heritage. This event was also in collaboration with the Notre Dame clubs of Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Lake County, and New York. A special thank you to all of these clubs for co-sponsoring this event with the APA. Joining me today for the conversation with Grace are some of the representatives from these clubs, and I'd like to take the time to introduce them. Some of them also serve on the APA board. So please join me in welcoming, we have Bin Nguyen, class of 1998, Diversity Coordinator representing the Notre Dame clubs of Chicago and Lake County. Hey, Ben. We also have Jeremy Dela Cruz, class of for Student Relations and representative of the ND Club of Boston. We also have Hello. Rachel Biscocho, our class of 2016 and our president of NDNY, and she is actually our tech director for today's event. Thank you, Rachel. And then we also have Randall Ong, class of 2012, vice chair of our APA board and president emeritus of the ND Club of LA. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us during this event. So now I would actually like to also introduce our guest of honor, Chef Grace Choi. A Dummer from 2003, Grace is a classically trained chef from the French Culinary Institute in New York and holds a PhD in food studies from NYU. She also serves as a cookbook judge for the prestigious James Beard Awards and is the founder of Larabee, which we'll hear more about in a minute. You may have seen her on the cooking channel as a host of Cooking with Grace or as a food critic. And we actually have a video that we want to show you today of Grace in action. So let's take a look.
You're on top of it all, you have culinary guru, Grace Choi. So the texture of the coffee cake is really hard to replicate as far as getting that sponginess, but yet it's somewhat dense. Looks like Francesca's using the butter and the sugar and actually just hand mixing it.
I'm not sure it's the best decision when you're in a timed competition show, but I do love elbow grease. Naturally, your hands are going to make their own distinct shape. So I'm curious what it's going to look like, if it's going to hold its shape at all. The cake itself has more of a vanilla cookie flavor to me. I think that it's a little dry. It's missing that sort of pillowy softness that the Tasty Cake has. I'm very impressed by the color and the consistency of this cake. I think that you did a great job of capturing that friendly taste that the Tasty Cake has. I would prefer it to be a little bit more bound, but I think you did a great job. I would have loved to see you use the whole quail egg. I was sad to see you cut away the crispy edges. I think draped over the sides, it would have been really beautiful, both flavor-wise and texture-wise. But I think it's really impressive that you took a very classic dish and amped it up with this beautiful beurre blanc.
9, 8, 8. You get a year's supply of coffee cakes. Congratulations! That's right. Well, thanks for watching, and everybody, get your stash on.
I love that video, and Grace looks like such a natural on TV. So everybody, please help me in welcoming Chef Grace Choi. Hey, Grace.
Hi, Rhoda.
How are you? Thank you for
Good.
joining
How
us
are you?
today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we wanted to just spend a couple of minutes just to chat with you and hear what's going on. So I think Ben's going to kick us off with some questions.
Great. Good afternoon, Grace. So,
Hi.
how does a dormer with a liberal arts degree in economics wind up dabbling into the culinary world?
Well, yeah. Well, this is 2003 that I graduated. I was always really interested in food, mostly as an Asian American. I was particularly interested in food and ethnic identity, but also just like the hands-on applications of food as well and cooking. I wasn't always the most talented home cook, but again, loved the way it brought people together, being in clubs at Notre Dame, like participating in that way around food and culture was always really important to me. And then around senior year, I just remember not wanting to do anything other than go to culinary school, not wanting anything other than going into the food industry somehow. I just felt like that was the place that I needed to be. And I started getting some pamphlets from, different culinary schools. And the French Culinary Institute was the school where Bobby Flay graduated from. It was the most prominent school that I knew of that was in New York. And that's where I wanted to be after graduating. So anyway, so I asked my parents if I could take cooking classes in South Bend. And they had kind of discouraged me. They were like, cooking is more of a hobby. It's not really a career. So I said, okay. And then I moved to New York and still, just really was interested in the French Culinary Institute. It was really painful for me to not be enrolled. And so I took out a loan, asked my parents to co-sign. They didn't quite understand it at the time. It took them a long time, but they co-signed on the loan. And so I enrolled in the 9-month culinary program. And even though I knew I didn't want to be a chef, I knew I wanted to be in the food world in some capacity. It was tricky for a long time. I knew I wanted to be in food in some way, but I didn't know exactly what profession would be the best for me. I knew I didn't want to be a food writer. Again, I didn't want to be a chef, but it was the most natural entry point into being in food at the time. And since then, so much has changed. I at the time, if you wanted to be in food, you had to go to culinary school. Right now, there are so many different options that are available to people. So I went to culinary school. And then after that, I moved to Italy. I worked in a couple restaurants in New York, and then I moved to Italy to work as a sous chef for a vegetarian restaurant and write a cookbook. And then I moved back to New York and I started the PhD program at NYU.
Wow, quite a journey.
Yeah, that was just the beginning of it. So
that's a lot of experience. I know you've worn many hats and you have like 2 decades of experience, right? Just diverse experience in the food industry. I have a question for you because I'm actually an aspiring entrepreneur myself, and I'd really love to hear a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey and how you took your vision for Larabee and made it into fruition by starting your own company.
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned before, food and cooking, it wasn't necessarily the most intuitive thing for me. And one of the things that I was really exposed to in culinary school and in working in restaurants was just the innate genius that a lot of people had, that creative bent. And that was never something that I had. And it was always something that I knew I didn't have. But at the same time, I felt like I was at an advantage because I understood how difficult it was for people to learn how to cook, and that the ways in which, or rather the tools and technologies that we had to learn how to cook weren't necessarily benefiting us. Everything aside from in-person learning, it's really difficult to learn how to cook off of a textbook. It's really difficult to learn how to cook off of, a cookbook or just a piece of paper. It's just not intuitive. And I can talk about that a little bit more later. But with Larabee is really a culmination or a convergence of all of the things that I devoted so much time and energy to. So not only the culinary arts, but also food media, and also my 7 years getting my PhD in food studies. When I was getting my PhD in food studies, it's a lot of people don't really know what food studies is. It's an interdisciplinary field that looks at the relationship between food and the human experience. And for me as an Asian American, being interested in ethnic identity and the salience of one's ethnicity as communicated through food, that was the perfect place for me to really dive into psychology and cultural anthropology. And I took some really seminal courses, specifically in linguistic anthropology and in the acquisition of cultural practices, where I learned that human beings are not passive recipients of knowledge. We need a participatory framework. We need to approach learning in a more holistic way. Like when you are cooking with, somebody that you care about, you're in the kitchen with them, you're hearing stories, you're looking at what they have on their windowsill, you're taking in all the sights and the sounds, and you're asking questions, and it's very organic. And those kinds of things become embodied knowledge, such that the next time you're cooking that dish, you're remembering those stories. And it's not like you're learning about the history of ravioli, you're learning about what they did that weekend. So it's much more personal, it's much more narrative driven. And what I was trying to capture with Larabee was that sense of person-driven, people-driven, shoulder-to-shoulder learning. And I felt like we had the opportunity to really reimagine the architecture of cooking. And that's been the most exciting thing for me to this point. I also think that when it comes to cooking, I can talk about this a little bit more later if anybody's interested, but cooking is a type of procedural knowledge. It's how to and know-how. It's very different from declarative knowledge, which is the knowledge of what, like information and facts. And the thing is, we go to these places, we go to YouTube, or we go to, again, our cookbooks to try and learn how to do things. And it's really hard to learn these things from text. Now, what we realized was that if we could nail down the cooking experience, this recipe teaching experience, we could broaden it to any how-to category, whether it's learning how to knit or change a tire or, make a fire pit or reupholster furniture or what have you. And we realized that this methodology, this learning framework that we created can really apply, across many genres. And that's really exciting.
That's awesome. I'm a foodie, and I can definitely agree with the fact that food brings people together, right? And it makes good memories. It forms organic relationships, like you said. So really interesting to hear about that.
Did you have any specific entrepreneurial questions?
Well,
I do.
Yes, Rachel.
I can go first if you have.
No, I was just going to say I have a dream of having my own food truck one day, so I'm definitely going to come to you, Grace, for some advice on how to get that up and running.
Yeah, definitely.
Rachel?
So my question has to do with something that I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, including Rona, are probably wondering about. Like, what is something you wish you knew before you started your own company that you discovered along the way, but it would have been great to have known in advance?
Great question. I didn't come from an MBA background. I don't have entrepreneurial experience. So the learning curve for me is very, very steep. And it continues to be steep. I still feel like I'm at the very, very beginning. Had I known how long everything was going to take, I've been working on this for 3.5 years, and it's been a very meaningful 3.5 years. I've learned a lot, and I've been able to test and experiment. Had I known, I would have done things differently. I would have budgeted differently for myself and for the company. I would have communicated expectations differently. And I really believe that, we rise and fall with the expectations that we set for ourselves. But those expectations, they should be ambitious, but they have to be grounded in some semblance of reality. And I was so naive. I didn't know how all the pieces of the puzzle would have to fit together to create something of this scale. And I would have communicated differently. I would have done a lot of things differently, but I also think I might have talked myself out of it. Had I known that it would have taken this long and that I would have had 2 small children, I don't know if I would have, but there's a slim chance that I would have delayed it or prioritized other things. So in that sense, I don't know that I would have wanted to know that. The one thing that I think would have helped me was to know that the human element is really just the hardest part of all of this. And communication is just so critical, more critical than anything to the success or failure of a venture. I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator when it comes to my friends and family, but when it comes to working relationships, I didn't have any experience with management. I didn't have any experience really having to communicate to people who thought differently than I did, who have very different worldviews. And that's really gotten me into trouble I have a tendency to be a little bit more compliant or agreeable. And also when you're in these early stages of entrepreneurship and you don't have capital, you have to ask for a lot of favors from people. And when you ask for favors, you don't feel like you can demand certain things. And so the way that I communicated with them was very apologetic. And it wasn't necessarily the most powerful way that I could have conveyed my expectations. So that in and of itself, I would have invested a lot more time into developing earlier on.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how you said that at the same time as you wishing you had known about the timing thing earlier, it might have prevented you from not doing it. So it's probably a blessing in disguise. But I think that your point about like the communication aspect is something that a lot of us, it's so hard. And no matter what job you end up going into, figuring out how to relay certain things and like ask those favors, but also like demand excellence and what exactly you want. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, one of the hardest things I think is like developers, engineers, they have a very different mind than I do. I'm very, not to say that there are no emotional engineers, but they process information. They expect communication to be, filtered in a certain way. And that's been a very interesting learning experience, learning how to speak their language and communicate effectively.
Yeah. And so going into other kinds of experiences. So I think we're going to look now into what has been your API experience. And so Randall, I think, has a great question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've mentioned your interest in integrating the Asian American culture into your cooking and the studies that you were pursuing. Having your own program on the cooking channel must have been quite an interesting experience. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How being on TV and representing Asian Americans in the food industry has been for you?
Good question, Randall.
Sure. I think that there are people who can speak a lot better about this than I can, just because the cooking component of my career and cooking with Grace was such a small portion of it. I do think that in the early aughts, when I first started out, there was less representation significantly. But at the same time, I never felt like, from the Food Network at least, when we were talking about ideas, I never felt like I was pigeonholed as an Asian American. At the same time, the food industry, sort of thinking about this in more of a meta way, the food industry changed. It became much more about first blogs and how many followers you had. And now it's more about social media and social media presence. And I don't know if it's because of just my inherent personality or if it's learned behavior from, being an Asian American female and learning from my mom about, humility and those kinds of things. But I had a very, very difficult time wrapping my head around the idea of followers and self-promotion. And I never invested the time to do that. And I think consequently, I never really succeeded with the food media and in the food media route, which is fine by me because it wasn't necessarily a place where I felt like I wanted to invest my time into. Now, being an Asian American, I mean, it's played a role in everything that I've done, even going into food studies. Like I talked about food and ethnic identity. I was really interested in identity development over the course of one's life from childhood to adulthood and how we learn that sense of otherness and also how we communicate and enact our identities through food and cooking and eating. And so that was the basis of my dissertation. It's the basis of how I think about food and psychology in general. I think being an Asian American in entrepreneurship is really interesting right now. There are many more startup founders who are Asian American, like Jae Hwang and Vicky Tsai from Tatcha, Katrina Lake, for example, from Stitch Fix. And there are also a lot more Asian American females, especially in the VC space. So these are people who are making decisions where money is invested and what businesses are boosted, which I think is fantastic. But that's not to say that it doesn't make a difference. Like I remember very specifically having a conversation with a VC who knew me for all of 2 minutes. And he looked at me and he was just like, I see your CV. I see all of the things that you've accomplished. And I get the sense that it's all come too easily to you. And I don't think that you have, I don't think that you would go down with a sinking ship. I think that you would rather quit than fail. And this is somebody who just knew me on paper, which is pretty bizarre for him to think that. And I remember at the time, Harvard, I was dealing with that lawsuit with applicants who were saying that they were discriminated against as not having enough grit. And I definitely think that that's, part of the double-edged sword of being a model minority. You put your head down and you work really hard and you don't make a stink. But there's also that flip side of like, does she really have a spark? Do they really have what it takes to build something unique? And that's really unfortunate. That's a bias that, it isn't the worst bias to have, but it is definitely something that I think about quite a bit. And in addition to that, it's an opportunity to, as a child of immigrant parents, there's an opportunity to participate in like that American dream narrative, which is really exciting. It can be onerous on people, or it can present really rich opportunities. And I feel like in my case, it's the latter. It's given me a sense of optimism, and it's allowed me to really think about what's possible rather than just following a track or, again, like putting my nose down and not making a stink.
Yeah, and thanks for your positive representation of Asian Americans in the food industry. And as on the Notre Dame Club of Boston, as well as the APA board, I meet with a lot of students who have questions about life after Notre Dame. So I was wondering, do you have any advice for current students as they discern their career paths, especially as they pursue different majors and studies?
Right. As they pursue different majors, I'm really happy that I was an econ major, but if I could have gone back, I would have been a theology major. I think it's much more important to invest in the things that give you a sense of flow. I also would suggest to anybody who feels like they don't know what they're supposed to do in their life, and for that feeling for me was very painful. And I don't feel like, I feel like I spent a long time, many years trying to figure out what that looked like for me. The one thing that I did in my sort of unconventional path was invest in domain expertise. I threw myself into learning the most I possibly could about food media, about culinary arts, about food and psychology. And Larabee, what I'm working on right now, is definitely convergence of the three. And I feel like because I have this domain expertise, I'm able to really speak about it in a much more impactful way. And I also think that that is our company's competitive advantage. Nobody has that same intersection of skills that I do. So I would suggest to anybody, whether they're starting out or thinking about a career change, to consider what it is that you know more than anything else, than anybody else about.
That is great advice. Yeah, specialization, especially in this kind of economy, is a very important skill to learn and very important for our current students.
Yes. Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing your experience with us. I think like what you said, I think as Asian Americans, we're raised to work hard and be humble. And sometimes people, misunderstand that as not having grit, but I just want to make it clear, we have grit. Asian Americans, we got a lot of grit. We just have our own unique way of showing it. So again, thank you, Grace. This was all very useful information. And now I'd like to segue into the cooking demonstration. So for our viewers at home, roll up your sleeves. It's time to get in that kitchen, get your recipe ready. I also want to bring out our guest home chefs who will be cooking with Grace, some of her close friends from Notre Dame. Please welcome Jackie Santana, class of 2002 and former APA board member. Jane Reimers, class of 2003 and also former APA board member. And Teresa Do Capriva, class of 2003. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for welcoming us into your kitchens and cooking with Grace today. So Grace, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
Teach us how to cook some savory pancakes.
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Hi, Grace.
Hi.
Hi, Jackie. Hi, Jane.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. I've got my ramen mug.
I do as well, with some tea in it. Ramen tonight.
Right. So feel free to ask me any questions, interrupt. We're going to try and keep this as casual as possible. And this is really like a super, super simple scallion pancake recipe. Do you guys know what's different between the Korean style scallion pancakes and Chinese style scallion pancakes?
Not at all.
No idea.
Enlighten us.
Neither do I. No, I'm just kidding. I think that like I think Korean scallion pancakes are a little bit more similar to like Shanghai style. They're like really light and fluffy. Chinese style scallion pancakes, I think what you do is you make a batter and you really knead it, then you flatten it out and kind of roll it out and flatten it out, and then it's already sort of shaped as you pan fry it. What we're doing is we're going to make more of like a loose batter, sort of like, you know, pancakes that you would make for breakfast. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Can I
right.
ask one quick question before you get started?
Yeah.
So I was telling my husband that we were making this recipe last night, and he just automatically assumed that it was a dinner dish. And I don't know if it's served at any time of day. Is it breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Well, I guess you could have it as a snack. When you go to Korean restaurants, at least it's like always in the appetizer section, which doesn't really mean anything because there's no such thing as appetizers. You know what I mean? In traditional Korean cuisine. But yeah, I would have it like sort of like how you have banchan as like a side dish. But it's fine, you know, in and of itself. Okay. Any other questions?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Awesome. Have you guys pre-measured your ingredients, or did you?
I pre-measured like one ingredient, the flour, because I have my sous chef here and I'm, you know, trying to avoid major cleanup, but no, I did not pre-measure anything else.
Okay, great. Do you guys have nonstick pans?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. And also lastly, I would have a cup of just crushed ice or ice cubes on hand.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have to grab it.
Grab those.
Yeah. All right.
I see everyone.
I can't. I feel like I'm on an episode of Chopped or something. Running around the kitchen for ingredients.
Yes, yeah, this is timed.
Yeah.
I'm in my ramen mug.
Okay, so now that everybody's back, let's measure 2 cups of flour. We're basically going to combine all of our dry ingredients into a bowl to start.
Want to help me?
What do you like?
Pancakes.
Okay.
Scallion pancakes.
Oh, whoa. Are they good or delicious?
They're delicious.
No, not. There's one more ice cream.
In here.
But everyone can get it. Oh.
Okay.
All right, so I've got my 2 cups of flour here.
Can you help me get it out? It's me. Well, don't throw it.
Awesome. All right, now add your half a cup of cornstarch.
Oh. I want to put it.
Okay.
Put the mama.
Half a cup of cornstarch. There it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Great.
Okay.
And you can throw in your sugar. Yeah, great, Jane. You're looking good. All right, now you can throw in 2 teaspoons of sugar if you have it. And 2 teaspoons of baking powder.
Can you put this in, buddy? Can you put this in?
Yeah. Well, let's make Isaac ready.
I'm ready.
All right. And if you have salt handy, salt is optional, but because basically what you're going to do is you're going to make a dipping sauce with soy sauce and vinegar, and which is obviously very salty. But I think that without the salt, it misses, like, you know, sometimes you just want to be able to eat it by itself. So I have like probably like a half a teaspoon of salt Okay. And the dry ingredients, we're just going to give a quick whisk just to combine.
Is this something that you eat often in your household?
No.
Oh.
No, this is, I mean, no, this particular style of scallion pancakes. This is something that I would go out and have at a restaurant. But jun, which is pancakes, that's something that we have, you know, in many, many different shapes and forms, like all the time. So what we might do is like lightly batter like pieces of cod and then pan fry that, or take like big, thick slices of zucchini and like make a little egg batter with that and pan fry that. You can do the same thing with like sweet potatoes, sort of like how Japanese, they have like the tempura batter, the fried tempura, and they use like onions or mushrooms or those kinds of things. So yeah, but this is really perfect for like if you have like leftover sauerkraut or any leftover vegetables. It could go like, you know, like a bell pepper or mushrooms or those kinds of things. Like you can just really throw everything in here. So like if I've gotten kimchi from the store and it's just ripened to the point where it tastes carbonated, then I'll just throw that into the batter, and it's just super, super good. And this particular recipe I really like because it comes out kind of like a funnel cake, which is delicious and crispy. And I can tell you why in a little bit. So I've got my dry ingredients here. Now in a separate bowl, you're going to whisk together your miso, about a teaspoon of miso if you have it. It's optional. And 1 egg that you're just going to crack right in.
Can you grab me an egg, buddy?
So I have like a brown rice miso. I don't know if that works. No.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Any miso. Yeah, that's just like a hit of umami.
Okay. So the miso is how much miso?
About a teaspoon. And this miso, I'm just going to mix in. The miso is really thick, so you don't want to whisk it in with like a bunch of liquid to start, because then it just won't disperse. Okay. So I'm mixing it in with the egg to start, and then I'm going to add the club soda slowly in small amounts.
I don't have quite your whisking skills, but I will try.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's all on the wrist. When sometimes like when my arm gets tired, I try and whisk with my left hand. And then it's like,
it's pretty aggressive whisking.
I'm gonna mimic your motion.
Yeah, try one thing that you can do is hold it like a kid holds a crayon.
Okay.
And just keep your wrists like kind of supple. And you want to, what you're trying to do is like incorporate air into it to make it like a lot lighter and fluffier.
Okay.
And then once you see that there are like no miso lumps, that's when you can start adding your club soda.
My miso lumps are not going away.
Are you whisking with a spoon or like a? Oh,
I've done my list.
It's just a little. You just need a little elbow grease, just a little more.
Mine is a little darker than yours because I have the brown miso, right?
Oh, that's fine. That's
okay.
Fine. Okay. I'm gonna measure out my 2 cups of club soda. Jackie, are you good?
Yes, okay. I'm good. Sorry.
Oh, okay, 2 cups. Yeah.
And the club soda should be like super cold, right, Grace?
As cold as possible. Like part of the reason why we have ice is so that it can make the batter super, super cold. So the club soda, what's great about the club soda, and like if you're making, like this applies to like if you're making tempura at home or like, you know, fritters or something like that, the carbonation in the club soda adds these air pockets, these air bubbles to the overall batter, which really makes it like light and fluffy. And the reason why you want it to be super, super cold is because with the hot oil, when the batter goes in the pan, it's going to create, the hot oil is going to create a seal around the outside, and it's going to keep that oil from penetrating into the batter. And that's good because you like the more it overcooks, it's going to keep the batter cold too, which means it's not going to overcook and get dense.
So is not ice cold club soda okay?
If not ice cold club soda, you should probably just
Get out of here.
turn off your video. Mute yourself.
So should we add, we add the 2 cups into the egg mixture?
Yeah, you can. I'll add like a half cup to start.
Okay.
And that's really to keep it from like, if you have lumps, it keeps them from getting lumps.
Okay.
All right. And then finally, we're going to mince some garlic.
Okay. If you don't have fresh garlic, or you're too lazy to mince fresh garlic, can you sub garlic powder?
Yeah. Yes. I would say it's better to have garlic flavor than to not have garlic flavor.
Yeah, Jackie must also leave the demonstration. Sorry, Teresa, it's all you now.
Sorry, I'm just too lazy to mince it.
So I just need 1 clove, correct?
Yeah, just 1 clove.
One more cup. Look like one beer.
And if you don't have, if you don't want to, you want it to be like super, super finely minced, so that if you don't get like big clumps of raw garlic in your batter. If you don't want to chop it, you can use a microplane or like a zester, and that's fine too. Or you can use a garlic press as well.
Okay, fine, I'll get the fresh garlic. Hold it.
Liar!
Wait, so she has it. She just didn't want to use it.
Yes, I said I was lazy, remember?
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. That's right. Now I added the garlic to the liquids, and I'm going to grab a larger bowl that I can mix everything into. Hold on.
Hi, Kate.
So we want to know how our cooks at home are doing. So if you're at home and you're watching Grace, just let us know how things are going on your side. Send us a little comment in our chat box.
And if you have any cooking related questions, please feel free to ask.
So Tony Doe commented that he would just eat these pancakes all the time because it sounds like a great late night snack.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that if you have shrimp or squid or, like pieces of fish that you want to throw in like that, or like clams too, like this is perfect for that. All right. Are you guys ready to combine the ingredients?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to add the liquid ingredients into my dry ingredients.
Want to help, buddy?
So what's important here is that you don't want to over stir. You don't want to like overwork the gluten from the flour. So sort of like when you make pancakes at home, like I'm sure everybody does every Saturday and Sunday morning, it can be a little lumpy, which is fine. And then you can like, hopefully it will, like the lumps will dissolve between now and when we actually start cooking as well. Okay.
1, 2, 3. Whoa! This looks like pizza.
Does not look like pizza. Sorry for the commentary.
No, it's okay. It's wonderful. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but this is pretty lumpy.
Mama, I want to make it.
Grace?
Yes.
How often do you make Korean food at home?
How often do I make Korean food? Probably half the week, like some form of Korean food. It's tricky because, you know, I have two small kids. They're 18 months and 4.5. And so they can't really have a lot of spicy foods. And Casper, my older child, she's really picky. And so anything with like lots of vegetables, of course, my child is super, super picky. But I'm trying to incorporate a little bit more just because I really want them to get a sense of it, a taste. It's hard. Like last night, we had fish sticks, you know what I mean? And broccoli. It's, in theory, I would like to do it a lot more. But they also get to have a lot of Korean food when like they go to my parents' place as well. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to preheat our pan. We're just going to turn on the stove. And I can show you, my pan is about 10 inches with like probably 8 inches in the middle. What we want to aim for is really just the center of the pan. We're going to make a pancake that's about 5 inches around. We don't want to go too far around the edges because it's harder to flip. And the edges might get overcooked before the inside really sets. And I tend to be like a little aggressive with the heat. I'm not going to do that this time around because our smoke alarm is like right above our stove and it's going to go off. So, but you definitely want it to be like as hot as, you want the oil to be as hot as possible without it smoking.
Sorry, did I miss how much oil goes in the pan?
Oh no, we haven't put oil in the pan yet. So whenever you're preheating your pan, you should put oil in at the very, very end, like right before you start cooking. Otherwise, like what happened a lot in culinary school was that we would put oil in the pan and then walk away from it. And before we knew it, like the oil was smoking and then it was unusable. So the good thing when you're making this kind of thing, like you want the batter to, I guess like filling ratio to be pretty equal, meaning that you want a lot of stuff in there. Otherwise it's just too heavy on the batter. So I've got like a big fistful of scallions. And even this I don't think is enough. So I'm going to use like half the batter and I'm going to put the scallions in this smaller bowl and I'm going to scoop it out from there. And with the scallions, it's just really like 2-inch batons, like 2-inch sticks. You can go all the way to like right here. So you have a little bit of the white part.
And if we're using kimchi, should we chop that up?
Yes, if you're using kimchi, you can chop it up. It depends on how big your kimchi is, but you kind of want it to be around the same size as the scallions. And if you're using bell peppers, those you really want to julienne as finely as you can because, I mean, it depends on how you like your bell peppers, but you don't necessarily want like big chunks of crunchy vegetables in there.
Just double checking that you turned on your stove, right?
Yeah, I turned on my stove.
Got it. Just making.
And again, scallions, garlic, chives, Taiwanese spinach, cilantro, like all of these things are great in here. All right, so I put my scallions inside a bowl and now I'm going to pour in about like half of the batter. As well as some ice to make it extra cold. So this is pretty heavy on the scallions. I'm going to add a little bit more batter. And I'm probably going to add a little bit more club soda because if it's too thick, then it's just going to be too much batter. It's going to be too much of a funnel cake and less of a scallion pancake.
So how much club soda? Because I think mine's too thick.
Let me add a little bit. why don't you add it to the scallions first? And then once it's mixed, then we can take a look at the texture. And because it might seem thick right now, but it might actually work out once it's mixed in.
You said about half the batter?
Yeah, about half the batter.
Got it all.
Got it?
Got it all. Now let's
Put it in here. Oh, put it in this bowl. Yeah.
This one?
Yep. There you go. Ooh, that's a lot of ice.
Better the better.
Can you help me stir this, bud?
Oh, let's start mixing.
Mix it all up.
Okay. So I'm not sure if you can see the texture, but this is like, it's pretty, it's not loose, but it's
Margaret, you're not.
Did you add ice in?
I did. I added some crushed ice. Yep. So Teresa, add about like a tablespoon at a time.
Oh, a tablespoon at a time.
I mean, like eyeball it.
Oh, okay. That looks good. Looks more like yours.
Great.
Okay.
Mine is exactly like yours.
Mine's not looking very good.
Jane, let me see yours.
Wait, let's see if I can. What's happening here? I've got.
No, that's fine. It's fine. Can you kind of like scoop it out? Can you show me what it looks like when you drip the batter?
Sure. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can.
Yep, Teresa, that looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Jane, honestly, yours is going to be the most delicious because it's got all that kimchi juice.
Yeah.
And the fact that you use kimchi is good because it's got a lot of juice in it. So even though your ice is like big and chunky, so when you scoop the batter into the pan, avoid any pieces with ice. That might be.
I didn't put the ice cubes into the pan. Is what you're saying. Got it.
Okay. All right, so my pan is pretty hot right now, even though it's kind of set at a lower temperature. I'm going to take it off the pan just until you guys are ready.
Yeah. What temp should the flame be on? Like medium high?
I would say medium.
Okay.
It depends though. If you have a gas grill, I would say medium. If you have an electric,
okay.
I would probably. It depends on how long it's been heating up for. Initially, I would say high for the electric, and after it's been that way for a little bit, like got enough to temperature, then you can bring it down.
Okay. Mine's pretty hot, so I'll keep it at medium.
Okay. All right. So 2 things that I like to have on handy. Of course, you need a ladle because you're going to be ladling, but I also have this little offset spatula. Not everybody has this. This is kind of, I know it's, but if you don't have something like this, then you can use just like a regular ladle. And this is going to give you a little assist when you're flipping it over. And another thing to note is that we're going to be pretty liberal with the oil. It's not going to absorb all that oil. It's going to create a seal, like the more oil you have, the more it's going to create a seal around the pancake and the less it's going to absorb. So what you'll notice if you've done it correctly is that all the oil that you pour into the pan, most of it is going to stay in there when you take the pancake out. Again, we're only going to do 1 pancake at a time. So now I'm adding about like probably 5 tablespoons, just like a good amount. Do you see? In fact, I think I'm going to add a little bit more, just like another tablespoon. Okay, everybody's ready?
I think so.
Okay, great. So now you want to do about like a ladle full worth, about a cup of batter. I might add a little bit more, but I'm going to start with this amount, and I'm going to go right for the middle of the pan. Okay, and I kind of use the back of my ladle to round it out a little bit, but you don't necessarily need to have like super perfect circles. And with this, it's kind of like, again, with pancakes, you're going to do the same thing. Once you start seeing the bubbles emerge, like on the top, like start seeing it bubble up, that's when you're going to gently flip it over. But you definitely want to have, in addition to your spatula, you want to have an extra tool that you're going to guide it over with. Like, we're not going to flip like this because there's just too much oil in here.
So it should be like a light sizzle bubble?
Yeah, a little bit more aggressive. Can you see mine?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I wish mine were just even a little bit more aggressive, but I don't want to set up the smoke alarm.
Okay.
So mine is like kind of floating in the oil at this point. And I can see that the edges are getting a little bit crispy brown. Yours too? Okay, great, Teresa. Okay. Jane, Teresa's doing a great job.
Apparently. Is clearly winning this episode.
There's no competition.
Jane,
Say,
Teresa came very prepared.
Whenever I make this again, I will never forget this experience with all of you.
Mine looks like it's pretty close to needing to be flipped. I'm going to cook it for a little bit longer on this one side. It'll be really nice golden brown.
Is it like bubbles on the top, or do you kind of peek on the bottom to see if it's like browned enough before you?
Great question. So I peek on the bottom a little bit, and mine's pretty golden brown on the bottom.
Okay.
It's still a little loose on the top, so I'm not going to flip it over quite yet because it's going to make a big mess.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to wait like just a little bit, but it definitely is like starting to bubble. You can see that it's like,
yeah, that looks great.
Yeah. And on the bottom, this is what it looks like.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to flip mine. You guys want to watch?
Yes.
I'm just guiding it over pretty gently.
Can you do that again? I'm just kidding.
So while this second side is cooking, I would go ahead and grab a plate with paper towels so that you can, once this is done, you can transfer this over to the paper towel lined plate. And that way it's not so oily.
How many pancakes would you like make with this amount of batter?
You can make like 6 to 8, depending on the size of the pancakes. It's pretty, I mean, honestly, like 2 cups of flour, that's a pretty sizable amount of batter. You could easily have this and have plenty. So like what I do is like, I'll make a big batch like this, and then I'll freeze them, and then I'll like reheat them in my air fryer, which I'd never had until my parents forced me to accept one.
Air fryer?
Yeah, and it's changed my life. It's like, honestly, Spam cooked in an air fryer.
Really?
Sounds amazing.
No, it's the best. It's the best. Like thin slices of Spam cooked in an air fryer, 390 for like 10 minutes. You just have to like check it halfway through. It doesn't make a mess, and it's so uniform. It is like, I will never cook Spam any other way.
We should have done that for this demonstration.
Yeah.
Can you put Spam in your pancake? Like, would you do that?
Oh yeah, of course.
I love it. Grace, I thought you were going to reach over right now and bring out some spam.
Yeah, it is.
Mama.
I'm not sure if you guys know this, but there was like a Costco spam shortage for like a good couple of months.
Oh, wow.
I probably contributed to that shortage. I have like 2 full Costco cases in my garage because I'm a low-key doomsday prepper. And yeah.
Jackie,
Yeah,
you're supposed
in fact,
to drop them off to my house.
I'll be there in 20.
and I also had to like settle for like the 25% reduced sodium, which
I like the 25% reduced sodium. It tastes just as salty to me, but I am obviously not professionally trained or anything.
do you prefer the 25% reduced sodium? It's good to know. It's good to know. Okay, so my scallion
Do you
pancake
think
is,
less of me because I prefer that, so it's less sodium spam?
I will never think less of you for something like that. Maybe for other things. All right, so mine is cooked all the way through, and now what we're gonna do is you guys let me know when you guys are ready with your pancake. Teresa, once again, looking good.
Grace, I actually have a question that came up.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can you refrigerate or freeze the batter for a couple of days?
It's really good to refrigerate the batter for like 20 minutes, but because I mean everybody who has had seltzer or anything carbonated, like it flattens out after a little while. So I would not, simply because you're going to lose that carbonation. I mean, it's such a simple recipe that there's no reason to. I mean, if you have the batter, just cook it off, and then freeze that rather than freezing the batter itself. Okay, Jane, do you have a final product?
I don't know. I'm a little sheepish. All right, here we go. It's kind of orange, obviously, but
That looks great. That looks really good.
nice.
Like I said, I think yours is going to be the most delicious because it has kimchi.
So does that mean
I was lagging on cutting the scallions, so I didn't have time to get my kimchi in there.
that sounds like an excuse, Teresa?
Yeah, it is. You went for it, so you get the gold medal on this one. I love it.
I feel like mine needed more kimchi, or maybe more authentic kimchi, because it's a little pale.
Next time, just with the rest of your batter, just throw in like a big handful of kimchi. Like if you have if you guys ever get radish kimchi, for example, like there are like the radish shoots. Like I throw that in. It's so good for everything. Okay, so now if you have soy sauce and rice wine vinegar, we're going to make a quick dipping sauce.
Give me a bowl.
So this you can also add scallions to. You can really dress it up with you can add a touch of sugar if you want. In fact, I will add a touch of sugar just to cut some of the acid. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour maybe like a quarter cup of soy sauce. Yeah. And probably like a tablespoon. This is really to your liking. And a sprinkle of sugar.
So quarter cup of soy and a tablespoon of the vinegar.
Yeah, and you're gonna taste it to see if you like it. So I'm just adding maybe just a smidge of sugar.
I like
another thing.
So I'll probably
another thing you can add here is like a splash of water too, if it's a little heavy on the salt.
Please step on the ground. Okay.
Needs more sugar.
Oh, Grace, someone requested if you could do a live taste test, all of you, once everyone's done making their sauce.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Do a little more. I like things a little sweeter in this house.
Yeah.
You kind of a lot because you're going to put a lot of sugar.
I know. Don't watch me.
Eliana likes a lot of sugar.
Close your eyes. Jen.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let's go.
All right. So I've got my scallion pancake. I'm going to cut it into wedges.
Okay.
Then you take holding this way.
You can see mine.
Oh, I can cut it. My turn. I'm cutting it out.
Yeah.
Then I'm three.
You'll make it.
What?
You'll make it.
Oh, yeah. Chop.
And remember, if it's really dark and then the inside is still gooey, the next time turn your heat down just a smidge so that it doesn't, so that the outside doesn't darken too much before the inside has a chance to finish cooking.
I think I should have like moved around the kimchi to like more evenly distribute it around the pancake because I feel like it's all in the middle. So it's a little mushy in the middle.
Did you eat yours already? Or are you just
No.
looking at it?
I'm just looking at it.
Don't eat
I
it.
thought by your description you have eaten it as well.
Don't eat it. It's dangerous.
I just replated it, but okay.
Okay. I'm gonna taste my soy sauce.
Okay.
Mine's
Okay.
pretty well
I like
balanced.
mine.
Yeah, me too.
Mine's perfect, obviously.
Perfect.
Great. Yours, Jane?
It's delicious.
Great.
All
All right. So, all right.
Hey.
Jackie, you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy New Year.
Mmm.
Want some?
Delicious.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
You like it?
Good job.
Yeah.
So yummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's so good.
Mine's super crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys gonna do anything differently with the rest of your batter?
I might try to add a little kimchi because I missed that step.
Yeah, I think I do maybe a kimchi scallion mix.
Yeah. I might chop up some scallions that I have.
Good
And
idea.
obviously add spam.
Yes.
I love it.
It's delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you guys are making me very hungry. Everything looks delicious.
Next time we're gonna do ramen.
Yes, that'll be our next segment for next year's Lunar New Year. Everybody, watch out. We'll do a ramen segment,
Instant ramen.
Instant ramen.
and then we'll get everybody those mugs that you guys have.
Oh yeah. This
You
is a
want to
gift
show
from
them the mug?
Teresa.
Yeah, I love
Here.
it. It's hilarious. Rachel, did we get any other questions from our viewers?
No, but we've gotten quite a few comments of people now craving scallion pancakes because they were planning to make the recipe after this. They were going to watch first your demonstration and then make it themselves. And a lot of people are like, I'm going to add shrimp, I'm going to add spam. We've had people from all over join in and say that they really enjoyed this. It's been super, really enlightening. And a lot of people are really glad to see some familiar faces. They were like, oh, I know all the people on this event today. So a lot of people say hi to all of you.
That's great. And for those that are watching at home, if you weren't able to follow and cook today, we are recording this event, and we'll send it out to you in an email so that you can do it. I'm gonna try this with spam because I'm a big spam fan. So, and I have one question for you, Grace. Do you deliver through Uber Eats, Seamless, anything? Because I'm hungry right now.
No, I don't. One thing I do recommend adding salt to it. I know the recipe doesn't call for salt, but it is important addition. Just because, you know, without it, it's just not as good. But no, I don't deliver. I am only a short order cook. I make 27 different meals a day for each member of my family. So, but you guys can all come over after the pandemic.
Wow. Well, this was a special treat for all of us. I love watching cooking shows, and this was really amazing. So thank you so much, Grace, for being with us today and sharing your experience with us and showing us how to cook your Korean savory pancakes. For everybody else that's watching, we want to know how your pancakes turned out too. So make sure you send us a photo either through our website, which I believe Rachel is posting the email. If you look at your screen on the bottom right, you can also tag and post us on social media through our Facebook and Instagram at APA of ND. Just want to say a quick thank yous once again to all of the clubs that collaborated with the APA on this event. Thank you so much to the clubs of Boston, Chicago, Lake County, Los Angeles, and New York. And special thanks to our organizers, to Ben, Rachel, Jeremy, and Randall. Thank you, Rachel, for running all of our technical and backstage operations for today's event. Special thanks to our APA Communications Director, Jen Ho, for setting up the event registration page, and to the Lake County Club President, Deidre McKee, for designing the beautiful flyer for today's event. And I want to say also a shout out and a thank you to all those who helped promote this event, including the young alumni of Notre Dame and Women Connect. And thank you to the NDAA and Angeline and Heather for all of your support and assistance in helping us put together this event. Lastly, thank you to our home cooks, Jane, Teresa, Jackie, you guys were amazing. And of course, to our chef, Grace Choi, for spending this hour with us. We learned so much from you. Like I said, you're like a natural at this and you're amazing. So thank you so much. Everybody else, look out for more events like this. We have May coming up. It's our Asian Pacific Heritage Month. So we have more programming coming to you in May. Look out for that. And this was a free event, but if you feel obliged to make a donation to our APA scholarship, we would definitely be grateful for that. Rachel will also set the link up in the chat box. So with that, thank you again. I don't know if anybody has any final comments.
Thank you, Rona. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
This is great. And I'm going to take you up on that ramen one. So we'll do this again next year.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, everybody have a great rest of your afternoon and happy Lunar New Year.
Thanks all. Happy Lunar New Year.